Mohammed, it's awesome to be with you today. Excited to be learning a little bit more about how you and the team at Shift Accounting are using technology to impact dental and medical practices that you work with. Um, Specifically today, we're going to be seeing how technology can really help streamline financial reporting and improve your profitability.
Well, thank you so much, Bill. My name is Mohammed Ismail. I'm, the founder and CEO of Shift Accounting. I started Shift Accounting in 2014. I've been an accountant for 10 years. I was lucky to have my first client to be a dentist. I really enjoyed the work. I saw a need for automation and making practices more efficient. And I guess that's why I started Shift Accounting. We work with practices all sizes, from a solo practitioner all the way to regional multi practice groups. We currently have clients across Alberta and BC. Sometimes we have the pleasure of visiting them in their offices, but majority of the work is delivered online thanks to technology.
Yeah, and my name is Bill Kimball. I've spent my entire career working in the small business space and the accounting space. Currently, I'm at Zero and direct our growth across Western Canada. And we got to know each other a few years back. I do a lot of work with really some of our most early adopting cloud accounting firms and have been just super impressed with what your team has been doing. So really excited that we can go into a bit more detail and walk through what the secret sauce is.
Thank you, Bill.
So I think one of the questions that I have right off the bat is really what it looks like what differentiates a high growth dental or medical practice from the rest of the pack. How do you see that?
So look, there are a number of factors for success for clinics, right? There is tons of things, but majority of I would say the main criteria is for success. I would say if you want to put it into a playbook, you need to have a good location, right? Location is important. Marketing, external and external, is also very important. This goes without saying, but having good clinical skills as a dentist, as a healthcare provider, is important. Having the ability to communicate with patients and tell them exactly what what treatment they need and how they go about it is also important. But one of the factors that I think is not discussed as often is being a good CEO. Running a clinic is running like a business. You need, you're running that business. Successful owners need to have a full understanding of their patients, their staff, and understand their numbers and have that well visibility of the practice, right? A lot of dentists and healthcare providers, they wait until year end. The tax accountant would prepare a notice to reader. This is primarily for CRA, and that's how they're seeing the health of their practice. So once a year they'll get this nice package from their tax accountant that shows them how the year what happened in the year. So to be a successful practice, you need visibility of your practice. You cannot wait until the end of the year to see that data.
Why do you think that's overlooked so often?
So one of the challenges is, there's so many data points for a medical practice, right? And bringing it all together, up to this point was not easy. Okay, so when you look at the key data points for a dental office or a medical practice, you have your production data, right? So a lot of dentists know their production because they're using a patient management system that tells them their production, other KPIs within the practice. Okay, the expense side, or overhead, they don't know that information, right? Because that information is coming from their accountant or bookkeeper. A lot of people, when you talk to them, they have no idea about their overhead. Again, if you don't have good processes, cash flow, I mean, it will be very hard to understand cash flow. And the one thing that needs to bring all this together is really good reporting. Right now, the buzzword in the dental industry is EBITDA, right? Because you have the buyers these days are, evaluating practice performance based on EBITDA, right? And, for simplicity, you can see, production minus expenses gives you your EBITDA, which is earning before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization, right? So, a lot of people now are started to think about their EBITDA, of their practice, because, buyers are coming and offering anywhere between 3 to 6 times EBITDA for a single practice. Smaller groups, they're getting offers anywhere from 6 to 8 times EBITDA, right? So now EBITDA is becoming an important thing to pay attention to. And now, whether you're selling your practice or not, but this is what the industry benchmark, for practices is. And you need to watch that number. You need to understand that number to be able to grow and, into a healthy, profitable practice.
So why, between production expense, cash, and reporting, like why are so many practices having challenges surfacing that data?
So there is obviously, number one, you're looking at multiple systems that don't talk to each other, right? Let's take another business, for a second here, not a dental practice. Let's say, a small business. They would probably use, an accounting system. They would use the AR, module in that accounting system. They'll use the AP. If they have inventory, they'll use that inventory, system. So most of their business is running in one or two systems, right?
Mhm.
Now, when you think about a medical practice, they have their patient record sitting in a different system, right? Their accounting is in a different system. They might have a completely different system to do something else, right? And these systems don't communicate with each other, right? So you have that technology gap that is, nothing is bridging all these systems together to make one, comprehensive report or comprehensive environment, for reporting and understanding what the business is going through, right?
Mhm.
So, that's one. Technology is one, but let's start, kind of let's go over, the common options for bookkeeping for medical or dental practice. Okay. And why am I, switching to bookkeeping? Because bookkeeping is the cornerstone, and the foundation for financial health. That's where it all starts. You need really good books to understand, your profitability. Okay. So when it comes to a dental office, some people will use their office manager, to do their bookkeeping. Now that creates two risks or two challenges. One is that person is not an accountant, so most likely the information that would be generated, it's going to be subpar. The second challenge is there's a that person is handling, the money that's come into the practice, and also handling the books. So that creates a risk in internal control and embezzlement. Okay. The second option here is you have bookkeepers who traditionally are engaged to pay bills, process payroll. So their scope is very limited, okay? And they're not looking at the practice holistically, and they're not providing that, advice to help clinics grow and become more profitable, right? The last option is, the tax accountants. So the tax accountants are, very qualified, well trusted, individuals that can provide that advice, can help the practices grow. But the challenge is, a lot of dentists will only see their tax accountant once a year, okay, at year end. The conversation, that they have with their clients is primarily focused on, tax planning and tax strategies, okay? And it's not focused on growing the business and providing that advice. and not because they don't know, it's because they don't have the information to do that, right? You need current information to be able to provide that advice. Okay. So um this is, even with these, three options, you still have a challenge in the way information flow. Okay. Are you following right now, or do I need to go back in detail?
Yeah, no, I got you. I mean, you referenced the technology gap, and you talk about the importance of kind of the bookkeeping piece. So for, I guess, for a practice, a typical practice, like what does that flow look like? Or kind of walk me through those different bits and pieces if they don't actually flow together that well currently.
Okay, so I think that the best thing is to transition to the next slide, which let's walk with the information. Let's just see how the information flows, right? So with each clinic, I mean, they have their PMS system. The front desk staff, would be recording, payments from insurance, payments from, the patients. Typically, there's a lot of transactions, so it's a lot of manual entry that happens on that PMS system, and that would take care of the revenue side. Okay. Now, when it comes to the expense side, the probably an office manager or somebody in the office would pay bills by credit card, or maybe manual checks. Typically, offices don't have a good AP system. Okay. When they're starting small, so just say, okay, well, kind of pay everything by credit card, or write manual checks. But the challenge is they don't have a good visibility of the expenses, is because the PMS system is not really an accounting system, right? And they don't have a way to look at their expenses, right? So
Mm-hmm.
they would need to send that information to an accountant or bookkeeper. So they have a good handle on what's going on in the revenue. They don't see the expense side. Okay. So
So this is really, that's really where they're interacting on a day-to-day basis.
right. So everything happens in the patient management system just from the revenue side,
Mm-hmm.
not the expense side. Okay. So now when you look at, the accountant or bookkeeper, obviously they're running, completely different system. Okay. And what is going on with that bookkeeper or accountant is waiting for bank statements to be printed, mailed, emailed, faxed, to them. They're waiting for the office to send, month-end reports when they're ready. Okay. So the accountant or bookkeeper will then, once the bank statements are ready, they'll just manually go and key in all these line items. Okay. Try to communicate with the office to figure out what's going on with these expenses that are they're not familiar with. um, the problem with that approach is, number one, if that bookkeeper is booking entries from the bank statement, just completely cash basis, without cross-referencing the day-end documents that come from the patient management system, you might be missing accounts receivable, portion of the accounts receivable.
Mm-hmm.
An example here: a lot of the money comes in from insurance companies, but insurance companies make mistakes, right? So if you're only looking at your bank statement to book revenue, you might miss some critical AR that did not make it to the bank statement. So you need to flag the office to say, okay, what's going on here? You guys said 10,000 should be coming in, but only 8,000, and now you have to go back and chase it from the insurance, or maybe a check wasn't deposited, right? um, so you can see that both systems operate independently. There's a lot of manual data entry. And accountants or bookkeepers will do quarterly statements or annual statements just because it's a painful process. And most of the time they actually don't get the information on time from the dentist or the doctors because they're just too busy,
Yeah,
right?
it really seems like you have the clinic and then the accountant or bookkeeper operating in totally separate silos. I mean, that's kind of the way you're outlining it currently.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. right? And it's very painful. Like, so I sympathize with, you know, the bookkeepers and accountants who, they're in the business of chasing. You know, I'm waiting for the, you know, the bank statements to be, you know, emailed. I'm waiting for this report. I'm waiting for that report. So it becomes a very frustrating process, right? And you know, people are busy, so the response rate is very slow at sometimes.
Mhm.
So it does make sense to just say, you know what, we're just going to do the books, you know, every quarter or at the
Mhm.
end of the year, you know, when we'll do it that way, right? So um with this technology gap that exists, right? You can see that there's too much time wasted between, I'm waiting for the statements to come in, I'm waiting for something to happen. There's a lot of manual processes involved, so you know the data, there's, you know, there's a huge risk of human error. um, if the office is lucky and they have, you know, a financial statement, it could be, you know, once every 3 months or 4 months, right, or annually. So you can see that there's lack of analysis and advice to help that practice grow and become more profitable, right? Because they're not seeing, you know, the full picture of their practice.
Well, you talk about operating. You talk about a few minutes ago. You're talking about operating as a CEO, and to me, that's having access to information. Like it appears like there's just so many different areas for inefficiency to creep in if you're kind of operating without a full picture. Which, because those two are completely separate, it seems like it would be happening more often than not.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, again, if you're the CEO, you don't have a full picture. How do you know? You know, am I spending? You know, am I overspending on my staff wage? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Is the business profitable? How's my cash flow? Right. Your patient management system is not going to give you that information, right?
Mhm.
So how are you getting that information? And you need it timely. You know, you can't wait every 4 months to see this, because you need, you know, that information almost like not almost in a monthly basis, so you can make, you know, strategic decisions.
So, how are you and the team at Shift really kind of turning this workflow on its head? What are you doing differently?
All right. So so this is where technology is a game changer, right? So this is a visual solution that we use with our clients right now. Okay, so let's kind of walk through, you know, what happened. So you still have, you know, the point of sale, and the patient management system still operates the same way, so that nothing changes there, right? But now when we introduce HubDoc and Zero, it really changes the process of what we do and the type of information that we're collecting from our client. Okay, so remember in the you know previous example, as I said, like the accountant or bookkeeper is probably not going to do anything until the month is done, wait for the reports, or every quarter. Now, you know, we actually ask the clinics at the end of each day, they have to print their day end report and upload that report to HubDoc, you know, from, you know, directly to HubDoc. And HubDoc is that document management system that, you know, the OCR technology will read that document, okay, pull up the numbers, and then it could, you know, publish it directly to Zero, or it just could sit there, depending on the process that, you know, people want to use. Zero is the accounting system, and it does connect to the bank accounts and the credit cards, and it automatically download these transactions on a daily basis, right? So now you have, you know, a bookkeeping process that nothing happens until the month end, because you're waiting for the statements and, you know, and all the documents to come in. Now you can do bookkeeping on a daily basis, right? So an example would be, let's say a clinic, you know, finishes the day, you know, sends their day end report to HubDoc. You know, my team would come in the next day, look at that, you know, day end report, and let's say it's $10,000. Well, we better see $10,000 coming into Zero, pulling that information from the bank account. Okay. And now we can cross reference between what the patient management, system is reporting and what the bank is reporting, and do they actually match or no? And if they don't match, we can flag that issue back to the office to go and, you know, kind of double check what happened, why there's a discrepancy in payment, right? So, the team now is dealing with exceptions, right, rather than dealing with everything, because you can see, like, again, there's tons of data, there's a lot of transactions that happen in an office, but with this technology, it really, now we're focused on just the exceptions, and we can flag them with the office right away, rather than a month later or 2 months, or when people wherever we forgot about that issue.
So rather than looking at this on a quarterly or annual basis, you're being able to use some of this technology to tie that PMS back into the core accounting solution to be able to have, some of this real time that you're talking about.
Absolutely, absolutely. What we do with our clients, we do their bookkeeping on a daily basis. Sometimes, obviously, like if we don't get the report from the clinic, we'll wait 2 or 3 days. We'll flag the clinic, say, hey guys, we haven't seen the reports yet. But it's not once a month, right? It's daily, or a few times a week, and it streamlines the process for us, and the client is happy because they know that somebody's looking at their accounts a few times a week.
That's super powerful. So I guess, like, having walked through what we just walked through, tell me more about the comparison of what it looks like in the previous workflow, which was totally siloed, compared to this. What does it mean for someone's practice, and then, like, how does that change your dynamic or the relationship that you might have with that practice owner, in terms of even some of the value that you and your team can deliver?
Right. So I kind of did a before and after shot here. Dentists, they love their before and after pictures. Right. So, you know, so before implementing, these tools and technology, bookkeeping process would be, as I said, uh, once every 2 months to once a quarter, right? Now, as I said, bookkeeping can happen on a daily basis, right? If we're having this conversation, I would say 5 years ago, I'd say, Bill, we're very efficient. We have a driver, and the staff that goes around the clinics and pick up all the bills, and and deliver it to us at the end of the month, right? Now you have HubDoc as a document management system. Everything could be uploaded there. We can pick up that document. The tax accountant can actually, like, if they're want to see the source documents, they can go in and pick up these documents as well, right? So from reporting perspective, now, because the workflow is streamlined, you get timely reports, right? To understand the operation and make critical decisions, right? So you can see how we went from quarterly or annual reports or no reports, to having the ability to generate reports on a monthly basis that are timely and actionable, right?
And so I'm just trying to think through this here. I mean, to me, another before and after from the accounting process is, when you talk about errors, there's so many different points of potential failure of the kind of before process breaking down, even just from a documentation standpoint of everything that needs to be able to be retained. When we joke about, a delivery person delivering that to you, um, that is painful.
Absolutely. And look, nobody likes to sit down and really crunch numbers, right? You know what I mean? And I think Zero and HubDoc for us is really a game changer, because, as I said, we honestly don't do any data entry anymore, right?
Mhm.
The team compares the data that's coming from the patient management system with the data that Zero is already pulling from the bank account and credit card, and just make sure that these two reconcile. So, right, because we removed the human process, and now the machines are doing a lot of the work. It's more efficient and improves the data integrity.
So what kind of reporting improvements are we talking about here?
So when we come to reports, because I feel like as any CEO of a dental organization or a clinic or a medical practice, you need a holistic report, right? Because if we only look at the P&L side, it doesn't tell you the whole picture. And if we look at the patient, practice management software, it does not tell you the whole picture, right? So you need a comprehensive report that you're looking at both sides, right? So from a financial perspective, obviously you need to, see your production, all your direct cost, your overhead, and that will, come down to, your net profit or EBITDA. So you need to know that. You need to see, your performance on a monthly basis. How are you doing with wages? How, is there an ROI on marketing? Because you're going to see how much you're spending on marketing. And then you need to tie back, to I spent X amount of dollars this month in marketing. How many new patients did I get, right? And this is the data that you can see from your patient management, software. And now when you put the two together, you can see correlation between, all these items, right? So is there an ROI on my marketing? Great. Am I seeing new patients? That, so let's keep doing it. If I'm spending all this money, but I don't see the results, right? You can, obviously that's something that, you need to figure some different method.
It would be nice to know that, like next week versus 6 months later.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Right. So, so now you have the financial information. What we also put, a budget or a target for that office, and we compare, their actual performance to their target. And what I mean by that, let's say I have a $3 million, production, annual production a year for an office. We want to know, are we going to hit that $3 million at the end of the year or no? Right. But we want to know it on a monthly basis, so we can identify if we're any closer to that goal or we're further. And if we're close to the goal, good job, everybody, kind of keep doing what you're doing. But if we're further from that goal, we want to know about it today so we can make decisions, that will help us get there closer today. So, looking at your, production by provider is great, but you need to compare that now to the target. Okay. Because if I don't have a target for, my providers or my expenses, I don't know how I'm doing. Right. And that all starts, with having a solid plan in the beginning of the year and monitoring your plan on a monthly basis and also taking action.
Mm. Yeah, so it really seems like the technology, allows, to use your term, the CEO of the practice to really now be able to take that step back, and to help work on the business versus just working in the business.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. Right. And, I do sympathize with, doctors, dentists. I mean, they are in a different, circumstances where their time is absolutely valued, chair time. That's,
Mhm.
your value is seeing patients. So you need to rely on other, data sources and other people to get that information. Not like, a CEO of um, an oil and gas company where you have, you're sitting there, you're looking at the
Sure.
vision, and you're having your nice lunches, right? I mean, it's a different setup.
That
Right?
totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. um,
So
so,
what kind of examples do you have?
and I think, look, having the data, it's great, but it's not the full picture. We can give you all the data you want, right? You know what I mean? And report in every KPI under the sun. So that's great. You need that. I mean, you need, a number of, KPIs. You don't need everything. But number two, you need to take action. So the example that I want to share here is, we have a client that, when you look at this client, let me kind of set up, the picture for this example. It's an office that generates about $3 million a year, right? In production. It's not bad. That's great. You know, it's about 70-30 split between, dental revenue versus hygiene. So you can say, okay, you know what? Very healthy split between, the dental and the hygiene. Okay. When you look at the profitability of the practice, it's doing good. There's no alarms. Let's put it this way. Okay. So when we set up, the key performance indicators for, the team, and the targets that we want to see for this practice, we noticed that their hygiene production per hour is constantly down, right? It's not hitting what we were expecting, for them. And then when you see that, over a span of, 3-4 months, it's like, okay, well, there's something that, does not make sense here, right? Their wages and salaries are slightly high, but not, nothing too alarming. So you can see these little warning signs, right? And sometimes the picture doesn't develop, right? And until you can sit down and say, okay, I am not meeting these targets by, let's say, 20% or 30%, okay? On a month-to-month basis, okay, that's fine. Maybe we had a bad month. But when you see it over a 6-month span, okay, you start to realize, like, okay, well, we have a missed opportunity here. And in this example, their missed opportunity was almost $300,000, okay, when you analyze that opportunity. And without looking at the numbers on a monthly basis, without looking at a trend, it would have been very hard to spot that opportunity. Okay. So again, that's great. Opportunity was spotted, because of all these lovely tools and reports and whatnot. Now, the second key thing here is, what are we going to do about it? Right? Now, I am not the CEO of the dental clinic. You know what I mean? That is where I think, the leadership role comes in, to look at these, opportunities, and efficiencies, and then take that information from these reports and go to the team, implement them, figure out what's going on, and keep enhancing that process.
But
And that is what makes.
but you were at least able to help spot that, right? And take that back as a, hey, here's something is now looking to be more of a trend versus just a single thing that happened month on month.
Absolutely, right. We put all these reports together. We give it to the client. We provide them, with our feedback or our view of what's going on, and then a good CEO, a good leader would take that information, go back to the team, and try to figure that piece out.
And this is what I think has been so cool, knowing you over the years, is really seeing how you've been really challenging the typical definition of what it looks like to work with an accountant or bookkeeper. I mean, at the end of the day, right, it's typically a very reactive relationship. And being able to surface this type of data, I mean, that's significant advice that equated to real dollars.
Absolutely. Really appreciate it.
Well, listen, this has been fantastic. I think one of the questions that I'm faced with is, hey, at the end of the day, are you running your practice as profitably as you could? and are you using technology to help deliver that impact? But any closing remarks or thoughts on your end, Mohammed?
You know what? Obviously, like what we're happy to come and kind of assess what's going on with your current accounting process, right? Well, number one, I am a designated accountant, but I actually don't do anything with the taxes. So that relationship, a dentist or a medical office have with their tax accountant, that relationship stays the same. What we do is we would come in, kind of understand your workflow in terms of, accounting and bookkeeping. We will implement accounting tools or technology stack to optimize the delivery of financial reports and financial systems, right? And then we can set up, the targets, the KPIs, the budget for an office. And then at year end, we'll work with the tax accountant to, kind of give them that information that they need for tax purposes, right? So our goal is to really help, dentists and, medical providers really understand what's going on in their practice, help them grow their business, and alleviate that stress, the stress of not knowing. I don't know if I'm making money. I don't know what's going on with my practice. So, we eliminate that stress. Or reduce
it sounds like in many respects kind of complement the work that's already happening, but just tie it together.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, listen, hey, this has been a lot of fun, and thanks for helping me be part of it.
Appreciate it, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for for this webinar. There's I hope there's value for everybody here.
For sure. Thanks, Mohammed.
Okay. Take care.